Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. This past Monday, I co-hosted a Twitter Spaces with attorney John Deaton, and it ended up actually going really well in the end, setting aside the technical mishaps which I've already described on the channel. And some of you were there, so you are well aware of what happened. It was a bleep show at start, but it ended up being really great, honestly. But that discussion was about Ripple's liquidity hub. And there was a lot of community discussion around and expressing concern that Ripple looked like perhaps abandoning XRP. XRP wasn't part of Ripple's liquidity hub upon launch, and Ripple did ultimately make clear they probably could have done a better job communicating this to the public, but it had to do with regulatory concerns. And I don't want to go through, that's not the purpose of me recording this video, not that explicitly, but I'm just kind of setting the table here so that you all know what I'm going to cover came from. And I will also mention, you can still listen to that Twitter space. You will have to be on Twitter itself. But it was a good time. So at the time we were recording at its peak, when it was live, there were about 1,700 people, a little over 1,700 people in the Twitter Spaces. And at this point, you can see it's on your screen. 21,100 people have viewed this. And it really was a great discussion. It was nice to be able to share thoughts with people in real time. So maybe doing some more of this in the future, actually. I'm pretty interested in it, actually, despite the technical mishaps, which were frustrating and stressful and not fun, setting that aside. But the reason that I'm mentioning all this, because one of the comments that I made was that Ripple has never sold any XRP to retail speculators, like you and I, for example. And I was surprised to have two people in a row tell me that I was wrong. And I was just surprised. Not that I know everything. There are probably some things that maybe people think is common knowledge within the XRP community that perhaps I really just don't know. But this one really caught me off guard, because I'd articulated many times for various reasons over the years of my channel, Ripple is only sold to people on entities on an institutional level, and currently is only because they knocked off their programmatic sales back in 2019, and now they're just selling to on-demand liquidity partners. That's literally, and they buy XRP back. But I never heard of them ever selling to retail speculators like you and I. So it caught me off guard when two people in a row told me that I was wrong. And in the days since, I actually spent a little bit of time trying to find where Ripple had done this, because I mean, like, two people literally back to back just about were telling me this. I thought maybe I really did just miss something that's that obvious, which would be interesting, because then there's the question, are there legal implications to that? Because, I mean, you may well know, if you look at the SEC's motion for summary judgment, their final legal argument just about, part of what they bring up is that Ripple's intended result is to get XRP into the hands of retail speculators. So I ended up, after doing research, and I was unable to come up with anything, I was like, I just need to crowdsource information. So I ended up putting out a tweet. I'm going to show it to you in a second, and it resulted in an interesting little back and forth. And I think we've gotten to the bottom of this. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, and so yesterday I tweeted out the following. Has Ripple ever sold XRP directly to retail? My understanding is no, but during the Twitter Spaces I co-hosted with Deaton, a couple people said they thought I was wrong. If I'm wrong, that's fine, of course, but if that's the case, could someone please provide a source? Because, look, I just want to believe as many true things as possible in life, just in general. And so if I'm believing something that isn't true, I appreciate it when somebody tactfully lets me know, hey, you're actually wrong about that. Because again, I want to share what I know. I appreciate when people share stuff back, because I'm a human. I'm certainly not infallible. There's going to be mistakes from time to time. And anytime I make mistakes and I catch it, then I'm happy to own that, because we're all human. That's just the right thing to do. But I wanted to know. And one of the individuals from the Twitter Spaces that did tell me that Ripple did sell directly to retail was the guy on your screen right here, who goes by the name V. It's at Victor Victory 75, and he was one of the two that during the Twitter Spaces articulated that I was mistaken and that Ripple had sold to retail. So I appreciate that he jumped back in. And I ended up actually even chatting back and forth a little bit after our thread here, direct messages, and I'll keep that private because I don't divulge direct message stuff. But I will just say, it seems like a really nice guy. Just had some really sharing of ideas, thoughtful discourse that. And so I appreciate this greatly because having these types of conversations, even when it's kind of like debate mode, like debates are fun. I hate arguments. Comparatively, I hate them. It's okay to have different viewpoints on stuff. I just wish more people could behave like V here and be adults and just express their perspective, even if they, think that I'm wrong. That's totally cool. So it is nice to come across, adults here who are actually capable of doing that. But anyway, so V responded to me and said, "Hey, Matt, the retail sales are the ones Ripple sold directly to exchanges. So while these were not direct sales to retail, they can be viewed as indirect sales. However, one can argue that these sales were offering the liquidity for on-demand liquidity. They can be seen as distribution events." And so upon reading that, I understood immediately what had happened. He was considering transactions to an institution as a transaction to retail. And so then it caused me pause because I was like, okay, so even though I understand that that's not retail and the exchange, obviously it's on a more of an institutional level, I think it's fair to say, is it fair to characterize, even if not directly those transactions, would it be fair to characterize those sales by Ripple as indirect sales to retail holders like you and I, as V is asserting here? And so I thought about it, and I thought, after literally looking up what the word sale means, just to make sure I wasn't missing anything, because I wanted to be precise, I came to the conclusion that no. And there is no reasonable way, so far as I can see, to consider these transactions to be sales to retail. And it's not even indirectly. And so it is a pretty big claim, because Ripple has, from what I've seen, everything I've ever seen from them articulates down, we're just selling, here in the institutional level, here with on-demand liquidity. And so to make a claim that it's actually to retail, which is in line with what the SEC wants you to believe is true, even though it's not, like, it is a pretty big claim. So it's definitely worth discussing as a community. But I saw instantly once he typed that, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I kind of wish that would have been articulated during the Twitter spaces, because I ended up leaving the Twitter spaces. And I even said live at the time, I was like, if I'm wrong, that's fine. Just can somebody, explain where, like, if there's a source, that's fine. I would like to see that. And so that's why I did this here. I'm not afraid to be wrong, but I want to know the facts. That's pretty much it. So I responded to V and I wrote, "Oh, is that what you meant during the spaces? Sales to exchanges aren't retail sales. Institutions could buy XRP from Ripple. The institutions could then sell to retail, but that wouldn't mean Ripple is directly or indirectly selling to retail." And so V responded to me and he said, "Yes, while none of these are direct sales as you say, the exchanges would have made that XRP available to the retail market where both institutions and retail customers would have bought it. I guess it's a matter of perspective. Personally, I see them as indirect sales." And it's not like a crazy thought that he had. And in fact, I'm willing to bet, since we haven't gotten to the end of this video, that there are probably some of you out there listening right now who are thinking, yeah, that does sound like an indirect sale. Well, let me try and persuade you. I'm going to give you my best argument here, because I just don't think that's the case after spending some time thinking through this. And if you think I'm wrong and you've got a good argument, bring it to me, because I can be persuaded. You just got to have a compelling argument that makes logical sense, and I absolutely can be persuaded on any topic, right? But I responded with the following. I wrote to V, "Respectfully disagree. If I buy a used Ford Explorer from Carvana, it's not Ford that sold me it. You could accurately state that Ford manufacturing it resulted in a secondary purchase of it, but you can't state that Ford had any hand in the sale of such a secondary transaction," right? And so something happened because there was an initial player that built something and then, trading hands ultimately. That is a different concept than being party to a sale directly or indirectly. And I break down that concept further too. So let's go down a little bit further. So then I also wrote, "Has Ripple ever had a hand in the transfer of ownership of and title to property from one person to another for a price for any secondary market transaction? Unless you can provide evidence they have, then it is the case that Ripple has never sold XRP to retail." And I actually shared this definition of the word sale directly from Merriam-Webster's. And you can look at the top two right here. So the first definition is the act of selling, specifically the transfer of ownership of and title to property from one person to another for a price. And then 2, opportunity of selling or being sold, distribution by selling. So when you're talking about the transfer of ownership of and title to property from one person to another for a price, well, that happened when Ripple sold to the exchange. But when the exchange, which is a separate party, sold it to somebody in the world of retail, that's when the transfer of ownership and title to property, that's when that would have occurred. Ripple has nothing to do with that transaction, not even indirectly. So let's go a little bit further, though. And so, because again, I wrote, unless you can provide evidence they have, then it is the case that Ripple has never sold XRP to retail. I think what's more likely is that you're unintentionally conflating part of the origin story of XRP with the fact that ultimately secondary market transactions were inevitable. The definition of the word sale is key in what I'm articulating here. And so in the next part of my my response to this, I think it's crucial to understand this, is there is a way that Ripple could help indirectly facilitate sales of XRP. They actually could do that. But when they're just doing their own thing and then other people on the planet are doing other things and Ripple is in no capacity involved, to state that Ripple's indirectly selling XRP, it's just flat out incorrect. And so here's what I wrote. For Ripple to have had a hand indirectly in the sale of XRP on an exchange they sold XRP to, the following would have to occur. Number 1, Ripple would sell XRP to exchange. And number 2, exchange would consult Ripple on who that XRP would ultimately be sold to in some capacity. So there you go. That would be Ripple having a hand on this. And then you could truthfully say, if there is any sort of evidence of that ever happening, then you could truthfully state that Ripple has indirectly sold to retail, because they would have had a direct impact indirectly. I said that exactly wrong. They would have had indirectly an impact precisely on this matter, though, of such a transaction. So then it would be accurate to state that. And I then wrote, unless that has happened or something very similar, then Ripple has had no hand in the sale of XRP to retail whatsoever, not even indirectly. And folks, if you look at the definition of the word sale, I think it pretty well cements my argument here. And then V was very courteous and responded to me and wrote, a very good train of thought and logic, and again, I must agree. But one way or another, selling XRP is the distribution model that Ripple have chosen to do and not giving it away for free. Ultimately, this is how XRP is getting to the market and where the SEC thinks the issue is. And so, and that's totally fair, by the way. And so I responded and I said, we agree. Ripple has not sold XRP to retail directly or indirectly, but unquestionably, they have had a substantial role in the proliferation of it. One caveat, Ripple gave XRP away for free in the early days. And so some of you may be unaware of that. I'm sure a lot of you do know, though. It may have been 2013 or maybe it was 2014. I'd have to double check through a Google search, but they were. It's probably 2013, because I remember that they were giving XRP away, but then eventually it became problematic once XRP was trading on exchanges, because then people were just taking it and then just selling it off right away. And so it was detrimental to price action for XRP. So then they're just like, well, I guess that distribution method isn't going to work anymore. So they probably could have thought out that one a little bit better, to be honest. I think that's a fair critique of Ripple. But this is all new. So he wasn't correct when he said that Ripple hadn't given away XRP for free. They literally did, just not that much. And then V responded to me and said, yes, I wish I knew about it back then and get some more. And I wrote, haha, yes, we'd all be happy with free XRP. And who wouldn't love that? Love to travel back in time and get me some free XRP. But they weren't giving out a ton, to be honest with you. It may have been, I'd have to go again, double check, but it may have been something like 1,000 XRP. And what was it worth at the time? Substantially less than a penny. Like 0.3 of a penny, half a penny, something like that. And I think that's about what they were giving out, or at least that's what it was shortly after that. I don't know. Now, in terms of the implications of this, they're real. Attorney Morgan doesn't seem incredibly convinced that it necessarily matters, but I wanted to share his perspective because he retweeted my thread there. And Attorney Bill Morgan wrote, I am not sure it is relevant. If whomever Ripple sells it to sells it to retail, the SEC will say that party is a statutory underwriter. On-demand liquidity sales are different in my view. Former SEC attorney Mark probably disagrees, and he tagged the guy there, but they are mostly after the lawsuit started. And that's, look, I don't pretend to know for sure because I'm not an attorney. I just play one on YouTube. I don't know, man. But we do know for sure that the SEC they do have beef with this because they have a clear issue with the fact that because of Ripple's actions, it ultimately does result in XRP ending up in the hands of retailers. And I'm not going to read what's on your screen here, but this was shared by the former SEC attorney named Mark. It's on your screen right here. This is the guy that Attorney Morgan tagged. And in a nutshell, if you don't want to read it, basically they're just noting here that this is basically Ripple's strategy ends up in the hands of people like you and I. That's where XRP ultimately ends up. So in terms of the legal ramifications, I don't know. All I know for sure is that, it must matter to some degree, even if Attorney Morgan's right that it may not in the end be that big of a deal. It only matters for sure in the sense that the SEC's arguing it, and if they're arguing it, it matters to them, and that means something. Now, from a legal perspective, do they have the right legal perspective? I don't think so. But it's just one more thing they can argue. So that's why I'm saying, if it were that much more clear, that Ripple, were it the case, and it's not, but if it were the case that Ripple were actually selling directly to retail speculators, which is why I wanted to talk about this, I still think it does matter. In the end, I think it would just make it easier for the SEC to argue the point that they're making. In the end, does it have if you're talking about somebody who is unbiased, would it make would there be a material distinction there? Well, Attorney Morgan doesn't seem to think so. But again, it just makes, from my perspective, it just makes the SEC's case that much easier to argue. So in the end, yeah, some of what I've been talking about here in this video had to do with semantics, but it's an important issue. And I wanted to talk about it because it had been bothering me this whole time that perhaps I was wrong. And I've been saying for years something incorrect, in which case I wanted to address it whether I was right or wrong. But I was so curious. I was like, okay, am I right? Did Ripple actually sell to retail and publicly state it? And I actually missed it because I was thinking, well, maybe that did happen. Maybe I actually missed it. But it looks like it was more a thing having to do with, what do we mean by selling to retail? And then you find out it was actually, okay, well, if you're considering those to be indirect sales through an exchange, well, I don't think it meets, I think you're using words wrong if you say that, which is why I went through the trouble of writing the thread up the way I did. Because the words do matter here, and they could potentially have legal implications. That's why I wanted to talk about this. So you can let me know what you think. If you think I'm wrong, if you've got a compelling case, I'm never afraid to be proven wrong because I want to believe as many true things as possible. And I know that there are things I believe that aren't true. I just don't know which ones they are, or else I just wouldn't believe them then. So if we can all continue to work together, and anytime I get something wrong, in fact, I appreciate being called out as long as people are being tactful and not rude, because if it's just in the effort of us all as a community to try and get to whatever truth is on whatever topic we're being discussed, well, hell yeah. Of course I want that. Not afraid to be proven wrong in the least here. So again, all that to be said, if you've got an argument and you can rip to shreds what I just shared here, bring it, because I actually very genuinely enjoy debate. I don't like arguments when people get their emotions, they get their feelings hurt when they got their ideas challenged, but debates are actually fun. And so that's why I start off, when I challenge somebody's ideas in my videos, you may have noticed that I'll frequently note, hey, just to be clear, this isn't a personal attack, and that's because I know, because I'm a 39-year-old man, I get it, I've lived life. People get offended frequently when their ideas are challenged. So to stem that off, I'm just like, hey, here's an olive branch, just so you know, I'm not somebody that's just trying to kick you in the nads. I'm not doing anything like that. Just want to have a fun little discussion and maybe debate here. That's pretty much it. But the reason I do that is not because I give a damn about their feelings getting hurt, because the way I look at it is if I'm being civil and I'm just challenging an idea and an adult person is actually offended because I challenge their idea, what kind of adult man-child is that? So if they actually got offended, I'd just be like, wow, something's wrong. So it's not because I'm so concerned about that. I'm not trying to just be some sort of people pleaser. It's because I'm trying to facilitate like a useful discussion. And I think it's more likely we'll have useful discussion if it's known up front, hey, just so you know, it's not an attack. I really do just want to talk about this. But if in somebody's even just in the back of the mind, like, is this guy being a jackass? Is this guy being a dick? I get it. So that's why I do that. Now, again, if anybody's ever offended because I think that their idea is wrong, that's a them problem, and I just don't give a damn. I genuinely could not care less. If somebody's offended because I believe something different than them, get the hell out of here. I ain't got time for the man-child status stuff here. So I'm being polite and civil to get to the end that I'm seeking, which is truth. That's it. Just to facilitate those, because I understand that humans can be finicky. We all have emotions. People can misread circumstances and responses. I've done it before in my life too. I'm just aware that I can do that and you can do that. Everybody can do that. So I try and catch myself if I start to feel like that, in fact, because it still can happen. This is something I practice, doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. But if I do start to go that direction, then I try to be like, whoa, Matt, just chill, son. Just like, what is going on here? Have a discussion. And then if somebody actually does go into attack mode and you can see they're not just operating in good faith, well, okay, that's one thing. But if it's somebody genuinely operating in good faith, just trying to share ideas, well, come on. So anyway, I've never ever explained that before, and I wonder if some people have thought, why do you even do that? It's like you're just being wimpy. I just wonder if anybody's ever thought that. That's not the reason. I don't give a damn what the man-child thinks, if there's a man-child in any given situation, which is not what happened here. But I'm just saying, I do not care. If you get offended, if you're so weak, from a, like a mental perspective, like, that's a you thing. But it's not going to stop me from discussing things that are of interest and importance to the XRP community. That's it. So since I've never described that, why I do that ever in the history of the channel, I just thought, what the hell? I'll just take a few minutes to explain that. I'm going to wrap up here, though. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.